Okay, we're talking about reflecting graphs. And first off, this way the picture of the little tree here being reflected. I'm going to put them both in here. These mean two different things. If a negative is in front of the entire part, that means you would take your answer, which in case it was a positive, then it would now make it negative. So we flip it across the x-axis from a positive to a negative. And conversely, if your answer was negative and the opposite, and you have a negative in front of it, negative times a negative would make it a positive and flip it back to the top. But we don't call it flipping, we call it reflection in the x-axis. But what is new to us is the one when the negative is in the inside. This is what we call reflection across the y. Because when we think about a graph, if x's are positive, we're on the right side, but now that positive x becomes a negative, so it shifted it from the right side to the left, or reflected it across the y. All right? Reflection of the way to say flip it. So the best one to show this with is a square root function, and I'm going to show the basic things here. So first off, this is the square root function. This is the normal square root function. Notice you can only have positive x values here because you can square root 4 and get 2, but you can't square root negative 4 because that gives an imaginary number. Well, what this does is this. Suppose I put all these numbers in here. My graph looks like this here. But now, after I get my answer, like the square root of 4 is 2, I'm now going to make it negative. So that would flip the graph down like that. But we don't call it flip. We call it reflect across x because it reflected across the x-axis. And here's the one that's probably new. Once again, here's our square root function. But now our negative's on the inside. So think of this here. If I have a positive, well, looks like I'll put a 1 here. If I have a positive 1 here, that means I'm going to put it in here. Positive 1, the square root of positive 1 is 1. But when I put it in the negative x up here, in the h function up here, a positive 1 now becomes negative, and I can't square root a negative 1. However, what would happen if I put a negative 1 in here? Well, negative 1 times negative 1 would become a positive 1. I can square root it and get 1. So what happens is this. The graph reflected across the y, because no longer, before when I only had x values, positive x values, I got positive answers. But now the only values that will work will be the negative x values. So that's why it reflects across like this here. So looking at this next one, now one thing I want to point out, we talk about horizontal liars being in parentheses. If it's in the square root, that's considered to be like in the parentheses. So I know this is a horizontal shift of this particular graph, not 2 to the right, but 2 to the left, because plus 2's moved to the left, move the opposite way, remember, because it's a horizontal liar. Hence the Julia Roberts picture up here, horizontal liar. But the negative in front means this. Whatever my positive answers I would get, I'm going to move this over 2. I'm not going to flip it up. Now I'm going to reflect it across the x. So now I'm only going to get negative answers. So I'm taking those positive ones and making them negative. So the graph would look like that. It reflected across x and shifted 2 to the left.